New research at the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center is using artificial intelligence to potentially make a breakthrough in predicting which patients could get an aggressive form of breast cancer. The AI tech would work to detect lobular cancer, is a type of breast cancer that affects about 15% of patients, representing 1 in every 10 breast cancer cases diagnosed here in the U.S. Here to discuss the use of the technology and the research, how patients could get a diagnosis faster, is Ohio State University medical oncology specialist, Dr. Arya Mariam Roy. Thank you so much for taking the time, doctor.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so tell us a little more about lobular breast cancer. How is that different from other forms of breast cancer?
Sure. Lobular breast cancer is the second most common type of breast cancer, and the most common type of breast cancer is ductal breast cancer. And lobular breast cancer is seen in 15 to 10% of patients with breast cancer. So when we think about breast cancer, we always think that it's a mass or it's a lump. But lobular breast cancer is different because in lobular breast cancer, it does not have a protein called as E-cadherin, which helps the cells to stick together. And because of that fact, when we get the imaging, lobular breast cancer will not be seen as a lump or a mass. Instead of that, lobular breast cancer will be seen as a file or like a cluster of cells. Or maybe in the mammogram, you'll just see that there is some thickness in the breast, but you won't be able to see it as a mass, which actually makes it very hard to identify lobular breast cancer from the usual imaging techniques that we have for breast cancer.
How would the implementation of AI help determine if a patient may have this type of breast cancer? How would the AI work to do that?
Sure. And in this research, we are actually using artificial intelligence to identify the patients who are at high risk of the lobular breast cancer coming back, or what we call as lobular breast cancer recurrence. So when we treat a patient with lobular breast cancer, and always lobular breast cancer have a high risk of recurrence, and sometimes lobular breast cancer can even come back after 10 to 15 years. And it's very hard to identify the patients who are at high risk of this cancer coming back. So this is where we are using artificial intelligence, and we are using the slides of the patients with lobular breast cancer initially diagnosed. We are using the slides which we use for the initial diagnosis, and we use the artificial intelligence tool to identify some markers or some signals from the digital pathology slides. And we combine that with the clinical risk factors that the patient have. For example, their age, their sex, their race, or the type of the tumor, or the size of the tumor, or the presence or absence of the lymph nodes. Then we club the clinical features with the artificial intelligence tool directed biomarkers that we identify from the clinical pathology images. And we are developing an algorithm or a scoring system.
Now, how soon do you believe this technique may be used on women across the country? Is it the research still in the early stages, or do you think it could be very soon?
The research is actually in the early stages now. Right now we are teaching the AI model to identify the patients who are at high risk of recurrence. So we are developing the artificial intelligence tool now. So after we develop the tool, we need to validate the tool, because all artificial intelligence tool or all tools that we have in the clinical practice, we need those tools to be validated before we can use that for clinical practice. So we need a little bit more time to validate the artificial intelligence tool, and then it will be available for the patients and also for the physicians, so that we can identify the lobular breast cancer patients who are at high risk for the cancer coming back.
All right, very important research. Dr. Roy, I really appreciate you sharing all your research, what you've worked on so far. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I think a lot of us, this Breast Cancer Awareness Month, this is just another reminder to get those screenings. Thank you for being here.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.